Welcome to EarthTone Archetypes, where we restore what was hidden, reclaim our dignity, and remember who we actually are. Melanin is the most powerful substance on Earth. They don't want you to know. Studied in laboratories, patented inside biotech companies, quietly filed into defense research contracts in such ways most people never see. And after all of that, decades of study, millions in funding, careers built around understanding it, the classroom handed you one sentence: skin color. And more of it, the less you're supposed to be, which is the direct opposite of the truth. Melanin is a superpower. If you have more of, well, let's just say you're better off, especially being a citizen on a planet with a sun. That is what the education system decided you needed to know about one of the most structurally complex, functionally remarkable compounds ever documented in the human body. Skin color. Move along, next chapter. So understand right now, what gets taught and what is known are two very different things, and the gap between those two realities is exactly where this channel lives. Identity anchor. Before we go any further, know who this is for. Not a color code, not a census checkbox, not a demographic assigned to you by people who never asked your name. Earth-tone people, the original, the ancient, walking around in 2025 carrying something extraordinary inside their biology, most never told, most never shown, most never given the language to even ask the right questions. This is the language, and once it lands, it does not leave. What science actually admits. Open a standard biology textbook. Melanin gets a paragraph, maybe two if the author was feeling generous. Absorbs ultraviolet radiation, protects DNA from damage, produced by cells called melanocytes. And that's where the conversation ends. Except the textbook buried the actual headline, and here it is. Melanin is not confined to skin. It is present in the brain, a region called the substantia nigra, which translates directly from Latin as the black substance, sits at the core of dopamine production, motor function, and how the mind processes motivation, reward, and drive. Named for its color, implications never discussed. Neuromelanin, the melanin inside the brain, is not a footnote. Its degradation is directly linked to Parkinson's disease. Researchers have been studying it intensely for decades. The information exists, it just doesn't make it into the general conversation. Now here is where the science becomes something harder to dismiss.
Melanin absorbs electromagnetic radiation, not only ultraviolet light, but across the full known spectrum. Infrared, radio frequencies, sound energy converted into electrochemical charge within the body. In controlled laboratory conditions, melanin has demonstrated behavior consistent with a semiconductor, meaning it conducts electrical energy and stores charge. A biological semiconductor present in earth-tone bodies from birth, not metaphor, not folklore, published science, sitting in journals most people are never directed toward. The pineal gland connection, Part 1. Deep inside the center of the brain sits the pineal gland, a small, pine cone-shaped structure. Modern medicine describes it primarily as a regulator of melatonin, the hormone that controls sleep cycles and circadian rhythm. What modern medicine describes less often is that the pineal gland contains melanin, the same compound, in the same place that spiritual traditions across unconnected civilizations across thousands of years independently identified as the seat of elevated perception, inner sight, and connection to something larger than the physical. Let that sit for a moment. Something every human has, but the more of it, the better. Yet somehow we have been told the direct opposite, persecuted over centuries for essentially possessing God's fingerprint on humanity. Ancient KMT called the pineal gland the eye of Horus. Vedic tradition in India called it the Ajna chakra, the third eye. Indigenous traditions across the Americas honored it as a center of vision beyond the physical. The pineal gland is melanin-rich. The pineal gland connection. Part 2. The cultures we just mentioned had no contact with each other, no shared text or common language. Each culture describes the same location and function with equal reverence. Science does not have a clean explanation for that convergence. It simply moves past it. EarthTone Archetypes doesn't. We address it, highlight it, and offer it to the people for awakening. Melanin is a compound that absorbs the full electromagnetic spectrum. Most so-called pigments in nature are selective, meaning they only absorb certain colors and wavelengths. Melanin, on the other hand, absorbs almost everything, which is why it appears black. A biological semiconductor present in the human body since birth. A brain structure named after its color, sitting at the center of dopamine and motivation, and a pineal gland carrying the same material that mystics across 4 continents independently called the gateway to higher perception. That is where part 1 left us. Part 2 is where the trail gets quieter. And in research, silence is often the loudest signal. Every origin point. Mainstream history presents civilization as a relay race, one culture passing knowledge to the next, moving generally east to west, growing more sophisticated over time. The actual archaeological record is more complicated. The Olmecs of Mesoamerica, considered the mother culture of Central American civilizations, left behind colossal stone heads, massive, precise, and unmistakably earth tone in their features, not stylized abstractions, real people, documented in stone. The oldest major civilization in the Western Hemisphere, and their faces look like the people this channel is made for. Ancient KMT mapped celestial bodies with precision that contemporary astronomers still reference. The alignment of structures at Giza to true north holds an accuracy of 0.05 degrees, built without the instruments we assume were required. Every origin point. Part 2. The Indus Valley civilization had urban water infrastructure, sewage systems, public baths, grid-planned cities, before most of Europe had permanent settlements. The Dravidian people who built it carry genetic lineages that connect directly to earth-tone African populations. Every origin point, every foundational civilization, melanated. That pattern does not prove a metaphysical connection between melanin and civilization building. What it does demand is a serious question. Why has that pattern been so consistently absent from the story told to earth-tone children about who they come from? Where the research actually goes. Here is a question worth sitting with. If melanin functions as a semiconductor, absorbing, converting, and storing energy, and responds measurably to electromagnetic frequencies, including sound and light, then the applications would be significant, medical, technological, potentially transformative. So where is that research? Not in community health centers serving earth-tone populations, not in the public school curriculum, not in the general wellness conversation reaching the people who carry melanin most abundantly. The serious work lives behind biotech paywalls, in cosmetic industry patents, in quietly funded institutional contracts. Researcher Dr. Frank Barr filed patents on melanin's electronic properties in the 1980s, documenting its semiconductor characteristics and suggesting implications far beyond sunscreen. Most people who carry this compound have never heard that name. The gap in who it reaches. The research exists. The gap is in who it reaches. Outside peer-reviewed consensus, researchers have proposed that melanin may function as a biological receiver, sensitive to natural frequencies, to light, to the electromagnetic field of the Earth itself. That has not been confirmed by mainstream science. It has also not been seriously investigated by mainstream science in any way that results in public knowledge or community benefit. There is a difference between something being disproven and something being ignored. That difference matters. The reclamation. Here is what all of this means, not as theory, not as speculation, but as a frame for understanding who EarthTone people actually are. Born loaded, not behind anyone, not arriving late to something others built, not the footnote in a story someone else wrote. Loaded with the compound that absorbs light and converts it to energy. Loaded with ancestral lineage that read the cosmos, built cities, mapped stars, and encoded knowledge into stone that is still standing. Loaded with the biological relationship to this earth that no amount of miseducation has ever actually removed. It was obscured. It was buried under curriculum that started the story in the wrong place. It was replaced with the narrative that turned the original into the afterthought. But it was never gone. Close. Outro. Melanin, the most powerful substance on Earth. And they don't want you to know. Once that knowing lands, really lands past the surface and into the place where identity lives, the shrinking stops. The apology for existing stops. What remains is exactly what was always present, waiting for the right information to activate it. EarthTone, ancient, built different at the molecular level. EarthTone Archetypes, not guessing at who we are, recovering it. Drop what landed hardest in the comments. Share this with someone ready to remember. And subscribe, because the next episode goes deeper.